The wind screamed like a wounded animal over the whitewashed prairie, tearing through the skeletal trees and rattling the world down to its bones. Snow fell sideways, not soft and gentle, but hard, stinging needles slashing at flesh and forcing even the cruelest men to bow their heads against it. Yet the three figures dragging the woman through the storm didn't stop. Their boots crunched against the frozen earth, and their breath came in ragged clouds. One of them cursed as he slipped on the ice. The others laughed. The woman's hands were tied behind her back with coarse hemp rope, her dark hair matted with blood and snow. Her breath came in gasps, but she made no sound of pain. Her eyes stayed forward, unflinching, focused on the well that stood ahead, its stones rimmed with ice, mouth wide like a beast waiting to devour. "You could have spared yourself all this," growled the biggest of the three, a brute with a scar down one cheek and hands like sledgehammers. "Just say the name." She didn't answer. Her lips were cracked, bluish, pressed tightly shut. Silence was all she had left. A second man, older with a wiry frame and tobacco-stained teeth, leaned closer to her ear. "You think silence makes you noble? Makes you strong? That belly of yours," he pointed at her swollen stomach, "says otherwise. You're dragging someone else into your damn lies now." The third man, younger than the others, kept glancing behind them. His name was Cal. He didn't say much. His hands shook. He wasn't made for this, not yet, not really. His eyes met hers for a brief second. She saw something there. Not pity, not strength, just doubt. They reached the well. It rose from the earth like a tombstone, rough-hewn, old, with a wooden pulley hanging loosely at the top. Snow had gathered around its base like a white shroud. The woman's breath caught. She knew. They weren't going to ask again. Carface yanked her forward. She stumbled, fell to her knees. Cal flinched as she hit the ground, but didn't move. "You sure this is what he wanted?" Cal finally asked, his voice nearly lost in the wind. This seems wrong." The older man chuckled. "Boss said bury her. Didn't say how deep." Scarface shoved her toward the lip of the well. She staggered but didn't scream, not even when her foot slipped on the icy stone. A sound interrupted the moment, soft, subtle, like leather shifting against saddle. All three men turned their heads at once. A silhouette had appeared in the distance, just a shadow at first, emerging from the swirling curtain of snow. It moved slow, deliberate, each step careful, balanced. The figure wore a long coat, dark as coal, and a wide-brimmed hat pulled low over his face. A rifle slung across his back. He looked like he'd stepped out of some old ghost story. Scarface narrowed his eyes. "You lost, friend?" The man didn't answer. He stopped a dozen paces away, close enough to be seen, far enough to stay in control. His voice, when it came, was calm, deep. "I reckon you boys are about to do something real foolish." Tension snapped into the air like a drawn bowstring. Cal took a step back. The older man sneered. "Ain't your business, stranger. Turn around." The stranger didn't move, didn't blink. Snow gathered on the brim of his hat, melted on his shoulders. He tilted his head. "Seems to me 3 men against 1 woman don't sit right with the Lord, or the law." "Law?" Scarface barked a laugh. "Ain't no law out here but the man with the strongest hand." "Then I suppose we're about to see whose hand that is." He stepped forward, slowly, purposefully. The older man's fingers twitched near his pistol. Scarface growled. "You're going to get yourself killed over a mule carrying some rebel's bastard?" The woman, still kneeling near the well's edge, stared up at the man. Her lips parted. There was no recognition in her eyes, only something ancient. Hope mixed with caution. She hadn't asked for saving, didn't believe in rescue, but something in this man's stillness, his silence, shook her. The rifle came off the man's shoulder in one fluid motion. "Let her go!" Scarface pulled his revolver. The rifle cracked before the pistol ever cleared its holster. Scarface fell like a sack of wheat, a bloom of red on his chest staining the snow. The older man screamed and dove behind the well. Cal froze, eyes wide, unable to move. The woman flinched as another shot echoed through the storm, the wood of the well's frame splintering inches from the older man's head. "Next one won't miss," the rancher warned. The older man threw down his weapon and ran, boots skidding across the snow. Cal didn't follow. He was still rooted to the spot, staring at the fallen body of Scarface. "Get away from her," the rancher ordered. Cal looked at the woman, then at the stranger. He took a shaky step back, then another. And then he turned and ran into the storm, arms flailing like a frightened child. The rancher approached the well slowly. The woman had slumped forward, chest heaving, her wrists still bound, lips blue. He knelt beside her, pulling out a knife from his coat and slicing the rope. She didn't speak. "Can you stand?" he asked. She didn't answer, but tried. Her legs shook. He caught her before she fell. "Easy," he said, wrapping one arm around her back. The snow fell harder. Time pressed down like a weight. He looked at the body still lying nearby, the blood already freezing in the snow. "We need to move." She nodded faintly. He led her to his horse, tethered just beyond the rise, half buried in snow. He helped her into the saddle. She winced, holding her belly, but didn't complain. Not once. He mounted behind her, wrapping his coat around them both. She leaned into his chest, not out of trust, but exhaustion. They rode. Hours blurred into white silence. Trees emerged and disappeared. Wolves howled in the far distance, but never came close. The storm swallowed their tracks almost as fast as they were made. Finally, after what felt like a lifetime, they reached a cabin tucked between a stand of bare trees. Smoke rose weakly from its chimney. The rancher dismounted, then helped her down. She staggered, but didn't fall. Inside, it was sparse. Wood walls, a single bed, a fire burning low. The warmth struck her like a slap. He guided her to a chair, then stoked the fire with practiced hands. He poured water from a kettle into a tin cup and handed it to her. She took it. Her fingers trembled, but she drank. "Name's Holt," he said after a while. "Ransom Holt." She looked at him, eyes dark and unreadable. After a long silence, she spoke. "Maria." He nodded. "You got folks nearby?" She shook her head. "That man they were asking about, Mateo. He your husband?" She hesitated. Then, "Yes." Ransom didn't ask more. Why'd they want his name so bad? Her voice was quiet, flat. He fought. Against them. Spoke out, wrote things. Said truth where they built lies. They call him rebel, outlaw. Said he stirred up the brown folks, the poor ones. He's been running ever since. Where is he now? She stared into the fire. I don't know. Silence again. Only the crackle of burning logs. Ransom sat across from her. He watched the flames. He'd seen too many like her, too many left broken and bruised by men with power and no conscience. You lost someone? She asked suddenly. He didn't look at her. Wife, boy, fever, long time ago. Maria stared at him for a long moment, then lowered her eyes. They say a name is a thing you carry even after you're gone, that it echoes in your child's voice, in your dreams. He nodded. You should rest, he said. She didn't argue. He showed her to the cot in the back room. She lay down slowly, one hand resting protectively over her belly. Her breathing grew steady, deep. Ransom returned to the fire, watching it die down to embers. Outside, the wind still howled, and snow battered the cabin's walls like fists. But inside, for the first time in a long while, someone had survived the night. And somewhere out in the dark, others would come looking, not for justice, but for silence. Ransom Holt knew that silence had a cost, and he'd just bought himself a storm. He reached for his rifle, checked the barrel, then leaned it by the door. This wasn't over. Not yet. The cold bit deeper inside the well than outside. When Maria fell, she didn't scream. Her breath punched out of her lungs as the world turned black and narrow and fast. Her shoulder hit stone on the way down, then her hip. Her knee scraped the jagged inside of the shaft, and the rope that had once been binding her wrists now tangled uselessly at her feet. She twisted mid-fall, but it didn't matter. There was no grace to be had. Then came the water. It wasn't deep. It was death in disguise. Her body plunged in feet first, but the cold stole everything. Her breath, her strength, her ability to think. The shock of it ripped a scream from her lips for the first time that day. Darkness swallowed her. Her head went under. She kicked instinctively. She had once swum in rivers near her father's ranch when she was a child. Warm water, safe banks. This wasn't that. This was ink and pain and ice, and the weight of her unborn child pulling her down like an anchor. Her fingers clawed at nothing, her knees slammed against submerged stone. Panic bloomed in her chest. She surfaced with a gasp, choking on her own breath, the air above just as bitter as the water below. Her hands scraped against the well's wall, slick with moss and frozen runoff. Her voice broke in ragged coughs. There was no one. No voice. No rope. Nothing but the storm roaring above, faint and cruel. She tried to scream again, but coughed instead. Her arms wrapped around herself, holding her belly. Her body trembled so violently she couldn't tell if she was Shaka, king from the cold or from despair. Then a shape moved above her, just a blur against the light. She blinked through wet lashes. A rope. It unfurled in front of her, slapping the water. A voice called down, "Take it." Ransom Holt's voice, unflinching, distant but real. Maria hesitated. Her arms barely moved. She floated close, reached, missed. "Again," the voice said. She tried. Her fingertips grazed the rope. Then it rose slightly, shifted toward her, lowered again, closer. "Now!" Ransom barked. She lunged. Her hands closed around the rope, slipped, then found purchase. Her knuckles turned white. Her strength was pitiful, but it was all she had. She didn't notice how long the pull took, or when her feet left the water, or how her head lolled backward, or how her breath rasped. She just held on, even when she thought her fingers would break. Then there was stone again, under her back. Cold hands at her wrists, the thud of boots, the creak of leather. Ransom grunted as he dragged her out. She lay flat on the snow, soaked to the skin, blinking at the white sky. She couldn't move. Her limbs no longer belonged to her. He crouched beside her and pulled his coat around her shoulders. It smelled of wood smoke and horses and iron. He didn't speak. He just took out his knife and cut the remaining ropes, then reached into his saddlebag for something, an old wool blanket, already damp with snow. He tucked it around her, pressing it to her chest. Maria tried to sit up. Failed. "You'll freeze," he said. Her lips trembled, but she forced the words. "I already did." Ransom nodded once. He picked her up, slow and careful, like a man lifting something more fragile than bones. She didn't fight him. Couldn't. The ride back to his cabin was different. She didn't sit upright this time. She leaned against him. Not from trust. Not yet. But because she had no choice. The SN, Au had slowed. The storm held its breath. The wind hissed instead of screamed. The horse trotted through the silence like it knew not to speak. Inside the cabin again, the fire was low. Ransom kicked it back to life, threw on more wood. He laid Maria near the hearth, then set about boiling water, hands steady. He didn't rush, didn't ask questions. Maria's teeth chattered. Her dress clung to her skin like ice. Her fingers were blue. He left the water and brought over a thick towel and a flannel shirt. "You need to get warm," he said. "Can you undress yourself?" She didn't answer. Her head dipped. Her eyelids fluttered. "Maria." Her eyes met his. Barely. He hesitated, then turned his back. "I'll wait outside." Leave the clothes by the fire. It took her forever. Each button, each movement sent sharp bursts of pain down her arms and back. She changed, wrapped herself in the shirt, curled under the wool blanket like a child in hiding. When he returned, he set a tin cup in front of her. Broth. Salt and warmth, and something close to comfort. She drank it slow. Time passed. She didn't ask how much. The next time she spoke, it came suddenly. Her voice was hollow. "How did you know?" He looked at her from across the room. "Know what?" "That I was in the well." "I didn't, I guessed." She nodded slowly, then looked at the fire. "Most people wouldn't guess." He didn't answer. A long silence stretched between them. The logs popped. Then she said, "They'll come." Ransom nodded. "I know. They won't leave me be." "I figured." She set the tin cup down, hands shaking. "They were after Matteo, but they couldn't find him, so they took me." "What did he do?" "Spoke the truth. Wrote it down. Read it out loud. They called it rebellion. Said he was trying to stir the landowners to war." "Was he?" She looked at him then, truly looked. "No. He was trying to stop one." Another silence. Ransom leaned back in his chair. "I ain't one for politics." Neither was he, not at first. But they took everything. His father's land, his brother. They took until there was nothing left to keep him quiet. "Where is he now?" Her gaze dropped. "I don't know. Maybe dead." "Do you think he knows?" "About the baby?" He nodded. She shook her head. "He left before I could tell him. I don't think he was meant to come back." Ransom didn't press. "You've seen things," she said softly. He nodded. "War?" "Some. Men like the ones who took you. Seen what they do. What it turns people into. Did it turn you?" He looked at the fire for a long time before answering. "I walked away from it. Didn't come out the same. But I still knew right from wrong. Barely." She stared at him. "You still do." He looked up at her, brow heavy, eyes tired. "Why'd you really help me?" Ransom leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Because I didn't like the way they looked at you. Like you were already gone." The fire crackled between them. Then a knock on the door made both of them freeze. Not a knock. A sound. A rustle. Ransom stood slowly. His hand went to the rifle. He crossed the room in 2 steps, placed his shoulder to the wall, and peered through a narrow crack in the wood. A figure. He opened the door quickly, gun raised. Cal stood on the porch, snow on his coat, blood on his face. "Don't shoot!" the young man gasped, both hands up. Maria's breath caught. Ransom didn't lower the rifle. "Why are you here?" "They're coming," Cal said. "Tonight. All of them." "How many?" 5. Maybe more. They know she's here." Ransom didn't move. I didn't know they'd do that, Cal pleaded, voice cracking. I thought we were just supposed to scare her. They said it wasn't going to go that far. But Jonas, he means to burn the cabin. Said no one gets out. Maria's face was pale, eyes locked on Cal. You think showing up here makes it right? She said quietly. I don't want them to kill you. Why? Cal swallowed hard. Because you didn't beg. Because you asked if I had a sister. Because you didn't scream. Ransom finally lowered the rifle, just a little. You bring them here? No, Cal said. They were tracking us. They'll be here by dawn. Ransom stepped outside, scanned the tree line. Then he nodded once. Go around back. You'll hide in the root cellar. If they see you here, they'll kill you too. Cal hesitated. You'll help her? I already did. Cal disappeared into the dark. Ransom shut the door. He looked at Maria. You believe him? She nodded slowly. Yes. That doesn't mean I forgive him. Don't have to. He moved to the mantel, took down a tin box, opened it. Inside, bullets, small tools, a revolver. He handed it to her. You ever fire one? Only at wolves. He nodded. That'll do. She stood, steady now. Her belly ached. Her limbs burned. But she wasn't falling anymore. Do you have another coat? She asked. He gave her his old cavalry jacket. It swallowed her, but it felt solid. She took it without comment. Together, they began sealing the windows. Ransom set traps at the back door. He poured oil at the edge of the tree line. Maria helped stack the firewood higher in the hearth. They didn't speak much. There was no need. They were building a last stand. Outside, the wind was picking up again, and with it, the promise of fire. But inside, between them, something else had started to burn. Not warmth, not trust, not yet, but resolve. And resolve, Maria had learned, could carry a person farther than hope ever could. Night dropped like a hammer, sudden and heavy, crushing what little light the storm had left behind. Snow no longer fell. The sky above the cabin was pitch and silent, but Ransom knew that kind of quiet. It was the pause before the charge, the breath before the gunshot. He finished nailing the last board across the east-facing window, then stepped back to survey the work. It would hold. Not forever, but long enough. Maria stood near the hearth, eyes watchful, revolver in hand. The fire cast her shadow across the wall behind her, long and flickering, like something not entirely human anymore, like a spirit summoned from the well, reborn in ash and flame. Check the back door again, she said. Her voice was calm, too calm. Ransom nodded, walked across the cabin. Outside in the yard, all traces of Cal had vanished. He was in the root cellar, wrapped in blankets, injured but alive. Ransom had left him water, a lantern, and a warning. Stay quiet. Stay still. Cal hadn't argued. Maria moved differently now, slower, deliberate. She gripped the revolver with purpose, not panic. She had removed the flannel shirt and wore Ransom's old duster instead, buttoned up over her pregnant belly. It hung off her like armor, too big, too worn, but strong. How many do you think? She asked. Ransom didn't answer right away. 6, he said finally. Maybe 7. Depends if Jonas brought more from town. 7 against 2. He looked at her. You counting yourself now? I am. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was acceptance. The wind began to rise again, not wild like before, but steady, inevitable. Ransom stepped outside briefly and scanned the tree line. He saw it immediately. A distant flicker, low and orange, weaving between the trunks. Torches. He closed the door gently, bolted it. Maria already knew. "Where do you want me?" she asked. "Front window. Stay." "Low! Fire only if they breach the fence. No warning shots." She nodded. He took position in the shadows of the barn, where he'd stationed 2 oil lanterns behind crates. If the men advanced in a line, they'd catch the reflection, and he'd catch them in his sights. He hadn't used the Winchester in years, but cleaning it that afternoon, it had felt like an extension of his arm, not a relic. He'd remembered things he didn't want to remember. Where to aim, when to breathe, when not to. A howl broke the night, not an animal. A man's voice, hoarse and mean. "She's in there," someone shouted. "We saw the smoke." Another voice, clearer. "Jonas." "You got one chance, Holt," he roared. "Send her out and we'll let you live." Maria looked at Ransom. He didn't flinch. "Reckon you're lying," Ransom called back. "Reckon you'll find out either way." A gunshot cracked, echoing against the stone hills. It hit the fence. Not close. A warning. The kind fools give when they still think they hold the cards. Maria crouched low, eyes sharp. Her finger hovered near the trigger. She breathed slow. Her belly tightened. A dull ache settled in her back. The second shot came quick. It hit the front post of the cabin, splintering wood. Another followed, and another, random, not coordinated. "Now," Ransom muttered. He fired once, hitting the man at the far left. The lantern light glinted off the rifle barrel just enough to guide him. The man dropped. Yelling erupted. "Back! He's in the barn!" Footsteps thundered over the snow. Ransom reloaded without thought. He moved between hay bales, shifted to the second window. Another silhouette darted behind the trough. He waited, held his breath. The man rose, just for a glance, and Ransom fired. The bullet struck the edge of the trough and ricocheted, but it was enough. The man fell, screaming, his shoulder torn open. At the cabin, Maria stayed, frozen. One man tried to flank from the side. She saw him, slow, creeping past the front fence. Her hand steadied. She fired once. The shot missed. He ducked, scrambled. She didn't hesitate. She fired again. This time the man yelped and fell sideways, clutching his thigh. Smoke crept from the tree line, thick, rolling. Fire. "They lit the oil," Maria whispered. The woods behind them glowed now, unnatural and bright. "They're going to try to smoke us out," she said louder. Ransom kicked open the barn door and dashed toward the cabin. He reached it as another bullet screamed past, hit the wood above the door. He shoved inside and barred it. "They've set the field," she told him. He didn't need to ask how she knew. The smell was already in his nose. Burning pine, dry grass, oil. Maria turned toward the rear window. "We can't stay here." "The root cellar," he said. She nodded, but then her breath hitched. He turned. Her eyes were wide. She gripped the wall. Her hand moved to her stomach. "It's time," she gasped. "It's starting." Ransom blinked. "Now?" She nodded once, jaw clenched. "Now." He didn't waste time. He grabbed the lantern, the blankets, the bag he'd packed earlier with supplies. He hadn't thought they'd be used for this. He opened the trap door behind the kitchen, gestured for her to descend. She shook her head. "I can't. Stairs." He didn't argue. He scooped her into his arms again and carried her down, slow, steady, careful. Her breaths came in short bursts now, painful. The cellar was small, dirt walls, just enough room for 2 people to crouch. Cal stirred in the corner. "She's in labor," Ransom said. Move. Cal slid back against the wall, eyes wide. I didn't know. Shut up. Ransom laid her on the blankets, propped her up. Maria gritted her teeth. Outside, the fire raged. Shadows danced across the trapdoor above them. Footsteps pounded the porch. We need to draw them away, Cal whispered. They'll burn the place down. No, Ransom said. They'll think we're in the barn. He'd left the back door unlatched. The SMO key would funnel through it. Make them guess. Maria cried out. The pain rose sharp. Ransom knelt beside her, pressing his hand to her shoulder. I'm right here. Her eyes were wet, not with fear but fury. You better be. The hours blurred. Above them, gunfire and shouts faded, turned to confusion. Someone screamed. A second explosion rocked the ground. The barn, one of Ransom's traps. The fire would take it fast. Maria's labor dragged on, brutal and slow. She gripped Ransom's hand like a vice, sweat pouring down her face despite the cold. He never left her side. You did this before? She asked, panting. No. Great. You? She shook her head. Wasn't supposed to be like this. Another contraction tore through her. She screamed. Ransom steadied her. Push, he said. She did. And then, silence. A cry, sharp, fragile, alive. Maria collapsed back, breathing like she'd run for miles. Ransom wrapped the baby in a cloth. A girl, tiny, red, furious at the world. He placed her in Maria's arms. The woman stared at her child, eyes wide, then closed them just for a moment. Relief, wonder, something between. She made it, Maria whispered. So did you. Ransom leaned against the wall, spent. Above them, the night turned quieter. A final gunshot rang out, distant, directionless. They ran, Cal said. They're gone. No one responded. When dawn broke, the trapdoor creaked open. Ransom climbed out first, rifle ready. The cabin was scorched, but standing. The barn, half collapsed. 2 bodies lay in the field. The rest had fled. He stepped outside into the cold light. Snow was falling again, soft now, forgiving. Later, Maria emerged, the baby bundled in her arms. She looked different, lighter somehow. They buried the bodies without words, built a fire that wasn't for war but warmth. You gonna leave? She asked. Ransom stared into the snow. Don't know. You have anywhere else? He didn't answer. She nodded. I don't either. He looked at her, at the child sleeping on her chest. You named her? Maria smiled faintly. Lucia, after Mateo's mother. She used to hum songs that scared off the wolves. Ransom nodded. He watched the fire burn. The baby stirred, let out a quiet cry. Maria soothed her. You can stay, she said softly. Ransom didn't respond. Not yet. But he didn't saddle his horse, didn't pack. Snow kept falling. They stood together in the silence. 3 figures bound not by blood, but by survival, by fire, by the choices that nearly ended them and the ones that saved them. Behind them, the well still stood, empty now, a mouth that had tried to consume the future, but failed. In front of them, a horizon, soft and white, waiting to be claimed. They didn't speak again that morning. They just stood, breathing together in a world finally quiet. And though Ransom Holt had long forgotten what hope tasted like, he felt something return in that silence, something small and warm and worth protecting.